Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Allison Mulch. I'm an Angie board member. Also with me from Angie today is Ben Rich, also an Angie board member. We are excited that you are here with us for today's workshop, A Student Perspective, the Green Amendment in a Classroom as part of Angie's 37th Annual Winter Conference. A special thank you to our conference sponsors, PSE&G, New Jersey Natural Gas, and our anonymous donor, who is a friend of science and environmental education in New Jersey, and to BASF and Grounds for Sculpture for supporting our field experiences. Also, we are placing a link to our YouTube channel in the chat room, where you can see all of our recorded content from past conferences, forums, and other sponsored events. We hope you'll subscribe to Angie's YouTube channel. Just a few reminders for this session. We ask that everyone keep themselves on mute throughout the presentation. If you do have any questions or comments, please put them in the chat room. There will be time for live questions towards the end of the presentation, in which you can either raise your hand or use the hand raising icon, and we will let you ask your questions. Today, Margaret and Svan are our presenters. The Green Amendment is much more than a constitutional amendment protecting environmental rights. It can also be an educational tool for student empowerment and current civics. Hear from these students themselves on the Green Amendment and how it can be utilized in a classroom for good. Margaret and Svan, could you please introduce yourselves and let's get started.
Yeah, thank you for that introduction. Margaret and I are from the New Jersey Student Sustainability Coalition, which is a statewide network of hundreds of mostly high school and college students representing different environmental organizations, schools, and clubs, and working towards different sustainability projects, ranging from education to different types of advocacy work, where Margaret and I really put our focus in advocating for New Jersey Green Amendments. Margaret, if you want to.
It pretty much summed it up all there, but yes, Svan and I are the co-coordinators at NJSSC, which is the New Jersey Student Sustainability Coalition. As Svan said, it's a network of hundreds of students across the state, both college and high school, and also some middle school as well. And we organize a team of leadership that works on the Green Amendment, which we're going to talk to you about today.
First, though, we wanted to get started with some quick icebreakers. So some questions are going to pop up and you can all just answer them in the chat. We'll give everyone a few minutes to respond and we'll read a couple of them aloud just to get the conversation going. So first, just quick, you can introduce yourself at the start of your response. Name, like age as in what grade you're teaching, not your age, and the subject that you are teaching. Then our first question, our two-part question is, how have you tried to engage students in environmental issues in the classroom and how well has it worked? Because today we're going to talk about a new way that you can do that in your classes. And then finally, what methods have you seen connect environmental issues intersectionally in the classroom, since that is a really important focus, one that we'll talk a lot about today, and how effective have you seen these methods been? So you can answer one of these questions, all of these questions, in as much or as little detail as you want. We'll give everybody a minute or two to answer in the chat. Okay, seeing the first responses start to pop up. Already different types of teachers coming, so that's great to see. So definitely, no matter what type of teacher you are and what age or subject you're working on, hopefully what we talk about here today will be useful for you.
I see Sienna, she says, in everything we teach, we try to foster a love of nature and the environment. That, of course, is great and obviously foundational. So it's a great answer to the first question.
Maybe we'll give everyone until, what do you think, Margaret? 5:06, 5:07?
Yeah, I was thinking 507.
Smaller group today, so we can spend slightly less time on this part. I see your response, students working to get our school to commit to going carbon neutral. I have students debate GMOs, fracking, etc., which really gets students engaged and also invite them to environmental commission meetings. I love that part about the environmental commission meetings. I'm a regular attendee of them in my town, and I've tried to get other students also going along with me from the public high school in my town. And yeah, that's really great. Even though sometimes we wish the commissions moved faster, it's really good to have that hands-on experience in the community.
Yeah, I definitely agree. At my school, they do liaisons to certain commissions. So I'm able to actually be a liaison to the shade tree commissions. That's really exciting and a really good way to engage students.
See a new response to all three of our questions, teaching from a teacher working with all ages and watershed education. So to our first question, how have you tried to engage students in environmental issues? This is what I have to do, but I love it. Even if one kid connects, it is worth it. Most are at least curious or know something about the topic. Yeah, definitely a lot of students these days, especially as you get older, they come into the classroom knowing different amounts, and we'll mention that later, and how it's really important to kind of meet students where they're at, especially in terms of different interests as you get to older age groups. I also try to connect what I'm teaching with a basis of what the kids know and connect it to a local level.
I love that. And the last person I see here is from the Greenbelt Nature Center coordinator. And that's super interesting. You said more learning by doing with trail work and stewardship these days. It's definitely really exciting. And I wish that my high school could offer more, outdoor work. Of course, it's not always feasible with the public high school, but I love that you have that opportunity. And when you have the opportunity, obviously you're taking it well. So
Okay.
on now.
Yeah. And keep putting your answers in the chat. Definitely, it's great to have everyone getting to know each other a little bit.
So now we're here to talk about the Green Amendment, obviously, but what exactly is that? We're going to go over that now. So what is the Green Amendment? So it is, as it says in the name, a constitutional amendment to the Bill of Rights section, specifically protecting these basic environmental rights, including the right to pure water, the right to clean air, the right to a stable climate, and the right to a healthy environment. And these are all super fundamental rights. No one here can live without them, and that is why they really should be encoded in our Constitution.
Here is the actual New Jersey proposal for a Green Amendment. So there's existing Green Amendments in New York, Pennsylvania, and Montana, and this is the proposal that's currently a bill in our legislature. As you can see, it's really short, and we'll talk more later about why we think the Green Amendment is really valuable because of how short it is and how relatively easy it is to understand. But even though it is not like a vast bill packet like we see a lot of big environmental legislation is, there is a lot of really important and powerful language packed into here. So just to quickly go over it, we don't have to really dig into like the legal weeds here, but some of it is incredibly important. You have different environmental justice language, such as every person, recognizing the rights inherent in every person and working towards the benefit of all people is really meant to eliminate practices of environmental injustice, of sacrifice zones, deciding that some communities, we can center industry and pollution there and sacrifice their rights to a healthy and safe environment to protect other communities. There's a clause here that says action or inaction to really recognize that our state can do just as much harm by seeing the science and seeing what needs to be done and not acting on it, like has happened with climate change and other environmental issues, as it can through action, which is traditionally a lot easier to prosecute, and different language that really changes the relationship between the people, the state, and natural resources, like this trust language here, where natural resources become like the common property of all the people, assets managed by the trustee, which is the state, and also mentions of present and future generations, which is why New Jersey youth are really attracted to this proposal, because of this insurance of our rights and consideration of us, where in the past we've really seen a lot of short-sighted governance. So that's just a quick introduction to what it is we're actually looking at.
And then next we're gonna go over what is really the goal of this bill. And the first is to support, really it's twofold. First is beneficial action. It is meant to support beneficial action by either the government, by business, or community interests. And these are all beneficial for environmental protection. However, all these actions are not always beneficial. On the other end of the spectrum, if an action is detrimental to a community or an individual, the Green Amendment will help the impacted parties seek a court intervention when the government infringes upon these basic environmental rights, like we said before, to pure water, clean air. And that is the key goal of the Green Amendment. On the nitty-gritty, we have these basic human rights that are currently not encoded in our legal system, and that is the main gap we are trying to fix with this bill.
Mm-hmm. Our campaign is student-led and really entirely run by students. We are really seeking to leverage the unique structure of the New Jersey Student Sustainability Coalition to mobilize students across the state for this amendment. So like we mentioned before, NJSSC is a statewide network of high school and college students, and we really focus on fostering partnerships between existing clubs and groups across all ages. So building that connection, because we really believe that students, or really anyone, is a lot more powerful when we're working together, when we're communicating, when we're sharing information. That is really a key part of our mission. And because the Green Amendment is a statewide bill that has the opportunity to help so many individual communities across the state in different ways, because it's a really applicable bill, we really are fortunate to be working with this type of structure and seeking to work with students in all different situations in different communities and working with their different legislators. We also seek to work with our partners across the state, including Green Amendments for the Generations, which are a national organization that really started this movement for Green Amendment. They're working for Green Amendments in different states across the country, such as New Mexico and Hawaii. And they recently got an amendment passed in New York, which is the first modern Green Amendment. It passed just in our last November elections. And we also pull from students' local groups, because again, that is really what NJSSC is founding on, working with clubs and classrooms and local environmental organizations that are student run or have parts of students. And our eventual goal is to put pressure on our legislators, because in the end, part of this is political in that we do need to pressure the legislator to pass this Green Amendment in both houses and then get the question on the ballot in 2022 so that the voters can decide, do we think that these rights should be enshrined in our Constitution? What we've seen in past states is that overwhelmingly voters say yes. So that was just a quick introduction to us to give some context, but really what we want to focus on today is less that political context and more, how can you use this Green Amendment as a tool in the classroom? How can it benefit teachers, really, especially when we're talking about the new climate education requirements? So as I'm sure most of you have heard of, the NGSLS requirements have been updated in 2022 to include climate education in nearly every single subject. It applies to grades K through 12, and it's required to be implemented by September 2022. So really, this is incredibly soon, and they're demanding huge changes, right? Hopefully, these comprehensive changes will really reach deep into subjects, not necessarily adding a lot of breadth, because I know many teachers can be frustrated, right, by how people are often saying, teach this, teach this, teach this, right? More and more and more is being added to our curriculum without really extending the school year or something like that. Hopefully, then the climate new requirements will not be something that adds a whole big burden on teachers, but rather something you can integrate into your existing curriculum and connect to existing subjects you're already teaching. So that really is the goal. And hopefully the Green Amendment can help you with that. What these climate ed requirements really mean, at least for us as students, is that people are recognizing that climate change is the present, right? Students need to understand the world as it is today, and climate change is becoming a centerpiece of current events, of politics, and of the lives of many people. And the world also needs student action. Obviously, we believe in this as student advocates, but really we need students to fight for our future and to tackle climate change. And in order to do this, students really need to be educated. And we do a lot of this educational work as a group, but obviously education, the best place for it starts in schools. Climate change is also the future, right? Students need to understand the future to prepare them to make life choices, like where to buy a house, what career to go into, where to get their food, and other daily life choices. The future also needs people that are prepared for green careers. Green careers are fast growing and they're a necessary part of our healthy future, while non-green careers are declining. And really, aspects of sustainable careers and sustainability are weaving their way into areas we don't traditionally associate sustainability with. So students really need to be prepared for a greening job market, and that market needs graduates that are willing and able to fill these roles. As for the Green Amendment can help teachers meet these new requirements. For one, most obviously, it has a stable climate clause. So as you may have read in that slide we showed earlier, the Green Amendment promises clean air, pure water, a stable climate, and healthy environments. And it also talks about future generations and preserving the planet for the rights of future generations. So this makes the Green Amendment a direct solution to climate change that you can teach, and it's an entry point into environmental law. Both our current legal system, the way it approaches environmental issues, really kind of from a mitigation standpoint, the way our environmental laws work and the foundation they rest upon, but it also introduces you to a new proposed system, a new way of thinking about environmental law, shaping environmental law, and a new type of solution to climate issues. You can also use the Green Amendment as a gateway into environmental justice issues, because really the Green Amendment is a reaction to environmental injustice. It's a reaction to sacrifice zones, a reaction to generational injustice, and a reaction to a lack of respect for human rights. You can use the Green Amendment, therefore, as an entry point into talking about these environmental justice examples and ideas like equal access to nature and to green space, conservation for the people, right? This idea that we don't want to preserve the planet necessarily because we're tree huggers, though yes, we do love nature, but we want to preserve it for basic survival and basic human rights. And also ideas of equal rights and how equal and civil rights intersect with climate and with the environmental movement. The Green Amendment is also an example of, for one, a current innovative solution. It's a legal idea and tool that's still being developed by its creator, lawyer and founder of Green Amendments for the generations, Maya Van Rossum. Pennsylvania's Green Amendment is actually quite old. It was first created in the 70s. If you're 16 like me, that's pretty old, but it was only put into use recently against fracking. So really, the Green Amendment is seeing a rebirth right now, and it's currently being developed and reshaped to tackle new issues like climate change. It's also an example of student activism, right? In New Jersey, students are really leading this movement. We're lobbying legislators, we're holding events, we're publicizing this on social media, and we're educating others, a lot of the times to other students, but also other members of the public as well. Our campaign is student-led, and it's students who are taking a lot of our action. And this is an example of really any student movement, especially the many student environmental movements that are going on right now. The Green Amendment is also inherently interdisciplinary, which is really important when we're talking about these specific standards, which really demand climate change to be taught in an interdisciplinary way. The Green Amendment is the intersection between the environment, between law, between equity and public health and science, and many other subjects that you can bring in there. So really, the idea is that the Green Amendment can help you provide you a framework to approach these new requirements. For one, it comes with a book and a study guide that are showed right here. So if you go to forthegenerations.org and you go under the resources tab, you can scroll down to see a section specifically for teachers and educators that includes this teacher guide pictured right here on the right. This teacher guide will take you through Maya's book on the Green Amendment chapter by chapter. And for your classes, it includes objectives, discussion questions, research activities, and also project ideas that focus on how students can take real action for their local environments and really contribute to this idea, not just Green Amendment based, but generally connecting to broader climate and environmental issues. It's also, speaking about the text itself, a short, concrete piece of writing that manifests broader problems and solutions. It's only 3 paragraphs, like you saw. And the 3rd paragraph is a single sentence. It's easy to understand, but if you want to, and if students are maybe older, if they are willing, they can look a lot deeper because each word is packed with its own meaning and carries its own history. Working in the movement, we can kind of see what's going on behind the scenes, and every single word word is shaped by experiences that are happening across the country, by different groups of people we're working with, by different challenges that are being faced in different states and in different areas. So really every single word carries its own history and is its own independent element of the solution, all working together to form this broader amendment and making the Green Amendment really span a broad scope of issues. The Green Amendment is also a lens through which you can view all environmental issues, right? It's a constitutional amendment, meaning it's meant to be broad and really easily applicable and customizable to local issues, to your students' own passions, or even what is already existing in your curriculum that you already think you need to cover, that you have lessons plans prepared for already, because really teaching climate is hard, right? It's really broad, it's a global complex issue, and there's already so much teachers have to teach. And especially if you don't have experience working with climate, even though I know many people in this room here today do, it still is incredibly useful to have this framework that's already made that can take you in so many different directions. Particularly, we want to talk about civics education, right? Because the Green Amendment is interdisciplinary, especially when we're talking about civics, because it is an amendment to our Constitution. It is a legal document. So when you're talking about the Green Amendment, you can use it to teach about the legislative process. For one, and a constitutional amendment, it's a really unique type of bill. It doesn't go through the traditional route that's usually done. You can't pass it with a 50% majority. You need a 60% majority, or it has to pass twice with that simple majority. And there's no governor. You really step around the governor, and instead you go straight to the people of New Jersey, the people of the state, because there's a higher standard for a constitution, right? It's also developing stories. Students can track the news in the national movement and in the state movement because there's always progress happening. They can learn about the New Jersey process by studying what's happening in New Jersey. And I know Margaret and I have gained a lot more familiarity with how our legislator works, with how we pass our laws and what our duties are as citizens working on this campaign. And you can also learn about other states and compare that to New Jersey's process and learn how different states work. It's also really a great tool to teach about environmental law. It's a unique type of legal document that we don't necessarily see in other places, at least in the United States, that was created by lawyer Maya Van Rossum. So you can look at the legal documents itself. You can look at a lot of the resources behind it, like court cases and the legal theory, much of which is available really easily if you just go to the For the Generations website. And you could also, like I mentioned before, assess at different levels of complexity. So if you're teaching, no matter what age, between maybe middle school and high school, you can approach this in different ways to fit the age of the kids that you're talking to. And it's also simply a new way of approaching environmental issues, right? As I mentioned before, our current legal system is really focused on mitigation over prevention. And the Green Amendment wants to flip that dynamic, say, why do we have to assume there's going to be harm in the first place? Why can't we stop it before it happens at all? And is our environmental system right now of laws that's really patchwork, focusing on mitigating many different issues, really working the best it can be? And this makes the Green Amendment really different from other types of environmental policy solutions out there right now, right? Like the Green New Deal or Biden's climate and infrastructure plan, which are a very different type of climate policy. It's also a way to approach teaching ideas like inalienable rights, like trust language, and like the role of the Constitution. The Green Amendment, obviously, it's in the Bill of Rights. So it's directly addressing questions like what should be an inalienable right. Right now, those rights include property rights. They include freedom of speech. They include gun rights, but they don't include environmental rights like the right to breathe clean air and clean water. The Green Amendment is a challenge to this dynamic and really asks students or anyone else to think about this question and think about what the role of the Bill of Rights is. Trust language is also a really key part of the Green Amendment and an example of how we can take existing solutions and existing dynamics within our society and apply it in a new way to climate change for a really innovative solution. The Green Amendment says that the state shall serve as a trustee of our natural resources, taking this long-standing legal dynamic of a trust, right? If you think of a trust fund, which I'm sure we all have heard of, and is applying that in a really new and interesting way, right? This is an old solution. There's a lot of legal precedent behind it. We know how it works, but it hasn't been applied to this way before on a statewide level to all of our public natural resources, literally to our air, to our water, things that no one can necessarily own, but which we all impact and which we all benefit from. So it makes you think, well, what else in our society do we see this way is not relating to the environment that we can reshape and apply in a new way to help solve climate issues. It also makes you question things about the role of the Constitution, like what is the role of our Constitution in our society? Should it be defending our basic human rights, or is it more necessary to provide for our freedoms first? Should the Constitution be changing in response to new threats like climate change? Should it be a more solid document or something that's fluid and changing over time? You can also teach students a lot through the Green Amendment about themselves as citizens, right? Understanding our rights is a big part of the Green Amendment because, well, for one, it's in the Constitution, it's in the Bill of Rights. So it shows students what our rights are in the Constitution and what our rights are not. And you can also learn about our right to advocate, our right to change the Constitution and be a part of this process, even though we're not of voting age yet, even though we're young people and we tend not to think we have power in this area, we really do. And there's a lot of different ways students can wield that power in this area. It's also an opportunity for students to participate in advocacy or just to watch advocacy, right? Either way, no matter whether students support us or not, by watching this movement, you can learn about advocacy skills, you can learn about our rights as advocates and where students can fit into the legal process. And you can apply this to any issue or any stance you might take. It's also an approach through the Green Amendment language, through the way we view individual rights and issues like sacrifice zones to cover a variety of legal and environmental ideas. And it's a good example through which you can explore complicated ideas like some of the language that we quickly dipped our toes into, like things like sacrifice zones and really in issues of environmental racism and environmental injustice. The Green Amendment is also a really important tool for student empowerment. And whenever I'm talking about climate education, no matter who I'm talking to, I always bring this up because there's a huge difference between empowerment and raising awareness. And traditionally, at least in my experience in climate education in schools, or even with some student-led awareness campaigns, we really focus on this idea of raising awareness. But awareness, at least in my experience, is just really aiming for a surface level type of learning. It's very passive. And for the most part, because we're raising awareness about climate problems, about environmental problems, it's largely negative. And so it's not really engaging, right? Empowerment, on the other hand, aims for a much fuller and deeper understanding of the issue. It's active. It's telling students that, no, you're not a passive audience in this. We don't want you to just be aware and think about this. You're actually actors on the stage. You have the power to do something. And no matter what you do, you're going to be impacted because you are part of this story. Empowerment also, and I like how people mentioned this in the very beginning before we started talking, it builds an existing awareness on what students are already bringing into the room to recognize that students are coming with different interests, with different knowledge levels. And when you just kind of give everyone the same cookie cutter thing, like in an awareness campaign, it's not going to work towards getting them to actually do something. And really, when we take this approach and when we approach students in this way with this goal of empowerment, it's a lot more effective, right? Because if our end goal in climate education is change, empowerment is what's actually going to lead to action, at least action on a much larger scale, right? And that's going to create the change that we really need when it comes to the climate crisis. When you use this approach, also, there's just better attention and more interest because students feel like they're being heard, like they're being seen, and like they are a part of the story and they have power here. And really, if our goal is a generation that is prepared for climate change and ready to take action, student empowerment is what really achieves that. And the Green Amendment can help with student empowerment, right? Because, well, for one, it's an example of student activism, and it's really important to include both present day and historical solutions of student activism so students can know that they can make a difference. Many people, most of my classmates, they really don't believe this. So we need to start teaching people that really young for them to understand that. And also that progress is possible, because when we talk about climate, a lot of times it is just a series of targets we fail to reach, a series of things our government has failed to do, a series of things that we as individuals have failed at in changing our individual lives. And the Green Amendment is trying to counter that narrative, tell people that progress is possible, there's work to be done, and it needs students, and it needs the students involved in it. It's also an example of a pushback to injustice, because again, environmental issues, they always seem to be all doom and gloom, and there's just so much failure. With the Green Amendment, it is actually an environmental solution that works. It's working every day. We had 2 already when Margaret and I started this, and since then we've gained 1 more Green Amendment. We just passed one in New York, which is a great success, and we're really hopeful for where we can take this in New Jersey and the way that New Jersey legislators are changing to kind of see the importance of this type of amendments. Empowering lessons, they are a number of things, and the Green Amendment really matches up with them very nicely. They are local, environmental, or empowering lessons are current, they're action-based, they're hands-on, they're cooperative, they're intersectional, and most importantly, they're inspiring. And the Green Amendment is inherently all of these things. Obviously, it's local. It's happening right here in New Jersey and in our neighboring states. It's current because we're campaigning for it right now. It's action-based because there's plenty of ways that students can get involved. We really focus in our campaign about making sure that no matter what your interests are, no matter how much time you can commit to us, there is something you can do in our campaign. There is some way that you, as a student, as an activist, can fit into contributing to a Green Amendment for a better future. And we really try and make that as open as we possibly can. It's also hands-on because there's many different ways students can get involved, whether it be in their communities or virtually online with us on the state level. It's cooperative because really we're an intergenerational movement. It's not adults telling us what we have to do. Really, it's us learning from each other, conversations that go 2 ways, and us cooperating in a way that we think at least is pretty unique among movements. And finally, as I talked about extensively before, the Green Amendment is intersectional. So even if a student doesn't think that climate is their thing or doesn't think that law is their thing, they can find some way to connect themselves to the Green Amendment because of all the different areas it touches. And then finally, again, it's inspiring, it works, and we're winning battles, which is probably the most important thing that any lesson on climate change needs to be. It needs to end on that note, or else we're never going to get anywhere.
Great, so there's many different resources you can use yourself to help you teach about the Green Amendment. First is the Green Amendment book, pictured here on the left, written by Maya Van Rossum. She is the founder of the Green Amendment movement, and that is super helpful. She is a lawyer and she is very knowledgeable about these issues. The next is the Green Amendment Teacher Guide, and the Green Amendment Teacher Guide has many different parts of it. It has, if you could expand, please. It is free, which is really nice, obviously, as teachers. It is on fourthgenerations.org/resources/, and there you can access all of these things for no charge. And the study guide includes many things. It includes discussion questions for you to use in classes, lesson plans to actually help you implement the Green Amendment into the classroom. We talked a lot about the theory here, but with this lesson guide, which is teacher guide, it will really help you understand how in practice it can help you. Research prompts are also super helpful. I love research personally. I'm a little biased, but it's great. And project ideas are also available. The Green Amendment has massive amounts of applications to specifically climate change, we've talked about a lot, but also to other environmental issues like pollution. Lots of project ideas are possible and are outlined in this teacher guide. So it also encourages students to think locally, as we said, and also be solutions oriented. The Green Amendment is all about crafting new solutions and being innovative, and even if something isn't working, changing and adapting and making it work. The Green Amendment is constantly evolving, as any piece of legislation will do, as things are changing in different states, as Maya and the movement learn what works and what doesn't work, what legislators think is best, what isn't best, what stakeholders works, and what case studies work. We adapt the Green Amendment to different states to make it even stronger. We also explore new issues and ideas. The Green Amendment empowers students to consider different problems, not just in their own community, but how they are connected to other communities across their state and hopefully eventually across the nation. These new issues are just essential to the Green Amendment. And then separate from that teacher guide, which is super helpful and definitely recommend you go check it out, is our training series. So NJSSC, the New Jersey Student Sustainability Coalition, Swan and I have this training series that we created. It is for students, by students, And it includes a Green Amendment introduction training, storytelling training, a lobbying training, local resolutions training, and even more. And all of these are recorded and are available to students. And the purpose of this is to educate other students, and not only to promote advocacy and understanding, but to empower students to get more involved. And the key part of our campaign obviously is action. So we understand that we need to teach them first, but throughout all those presentations, as Fawn said, we try to empower students not only to learn, but to take action with us as well. Also, you can invite speakers, and we can be a resource to you. That includes Fawn and I, or also Maya Van Rossum, or anyone from Green Amendments for Generations. They are a wide movement focusing on many different states: New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, New Mexico, just to name a few, Maine. So there's people across the country who are really working for this. And there's many strong advocates who can come and speak to your students. So as we see, we can use the Green Amendment as first a starting point. Climate change and climate is big. It's a huge issue. It's global. And the Green Amendment really will allow us to launch into many different branches of many different issues. Climate change is going to affect all of us in many different ways, and so are all climate issues. And I think that's why we're all here. We understand that. But the Green Amendment will allow you to emphasize that and explain that in a realistic way to students, showing that the Green Amendment is one thing, and you can branch off to many different problems from the Green Amendment. The Green Amendment is also a guiding framework. It is a new legal approach. It's also a philosophy, and it really hones in on these very important and valuable guiding principles of environmental justice, of human rights, that idea, that dichotomy between the current human rights that we have, that we're endowed to, and also the legal system, which does not currently hold up those human rights to basic clean air, clean water, stable climate, healthy environment. Also, it's a guiding framework that promotes the principles of nature, respect for nature. I think, as someone said, how they always instill love and kindness into their work. The Green Amendment instills a respect for nature. Also, it instills a common connection to nature. As someone also said, how they try to take their students out into field work. The Green Amendment connects students to nature and local environmental issues, and also connects them to ways they can be involved in enacting change. Now, the Green Amendment is also an example, and it's a very powerful one. It includes many different resources that people can use and many different branches into which people can explore. And it's also cross-disciplinary. And this connects your class to many other topics, and oftentimes science is thought of as the key connection to environment. And while it is true that science classes are important, there's also other ways you can connect the Green Amendment, including law, including history, social science, different classes, English, and it can really help these non-science classes as well as science classes connect to the climate and environment and really become better citizens. And that really is something that is cross-disciplinary. So as we've learned now how the Green Amendment can be used in the classroom and can help the classroom, also conversely is true. The Green Amendment can be helped by you all using it in your classroom. And we're going to go into that now. So our big questions here we're going to go over. So we understand this, but how can the Green Amendment how can classroom usage help the Green Amendment? And what role can students play in the classroom? How can they help? Well, this is kind of reviewing our New Jersey proposal from earlier. Currently, this is the proposal, and you see here this middle paragraph in B. Notice that red bolded phrase, including both present and future generations. This is a very important phrase to the Green Amendment and the movement as a whole. And that is because the Green Amendment on a whole is intergenerational legislation. And the Green Amendment itself is intergenerational. And the Green Amendment itself secures these basic environmental rights, as we said, these really fundamental rights for all people and all generations. The all people part is an appeal to environmental justice, and the all generations portion is an appeal to generational justice, to student engagement. And this responds to these long-term environmental problems with relevant, long-term protective legislation. as a constitutional amendment already, it is meant to be long-term. It's meant to be protective. However, the Green Amendment itself really emphasizes that in its language. The Green Amendments for Generations is the central movement for the Green Amendment, and they're fighting for it in many states across the nation, as that is what that acronym stands for. And for generations, that TFG has actually kind of a double purpose, a double meaning. So Green Amendments are obviously for the generations, meaning that as constitutional amendments, they are long withstanding. They are meant to live on for years to come, and that is something that I personally find very comforting and endearing about the amendment, that hopefully it will outlive me and will protect my children, my children's children. But the movement itself is also for the generations, meaning it encompasses all generations. The Green Amendment movement itself is very intergenerational on a national level. And us students, as Fawn said, collaborate almost equally with adults weekly to discuss strategy across the state. And we work together collaboratively across ages, from students to our age, I'm 17, Swan is 16, to adults, to retirees, to senior citizens. And we all work together for this bill because it is, at its heart, intergenerational. So what conclusions can we derive from this? First of all, student support is logical, but also extremely necessary for the passage of a Green Amendment in New Jersey and in different states across the country. As an intergenerational movement itself, student voices and support is really crucial. And this vital support can be fostered in classroom environments, and that's where you all come in. So students have been vital to the fighting force behind the Green Amendment in New Jersey, not from the start, but for the past or so year. Swan and I created this campaign, and since then there's been a very active student base. So students have used a wide variety of tactics to contribute to the movement, and this includes a podcast, which you can see right here on the top right. That is the cover art. Really proud of that. I did not create it, but I think it looks really great. And we have webinars. There's other student groups besides us. Buy Plastic Bags is one of them. They hosted a really successful webinar where they had legislators attend and they talked to them about the Green Amendment. We have trainings, as Fawn and I created, on the Green Amendment, lobbying, on local resolutions. We have virtual and in-person lobbying meetings. Swan and I and another person from our campaign were actually given the opportunity to go down to Trenton and lobby in person, our legislators, and a really fun time running around telling legislators, hey, I skipped school for this, please listen to me. It was a great time, and it really just shows how vital the force is for students across the state for the Green Amendment. We also use petitions. We are very active on social media, especially since students, have that experience in creating and navigating social networking platforms. And we also use many other tactics, including art and letters to the editor. And for each of these, students bring a unique perspective and skill set, which enhances the work of adult activists alone, which is why we're so essential. Like I said, for social media, we have that experience, unlike many older generations, from a young age, creating and navigating these platforms. And that can be utilized for recruitment and also lobbying legislators. For example, on Twitter is a good example of where we can lobby our legislators. So beyond the magnitude of tactics that we have used as students, why are students specifically impactful in activism in general, and activism for the Green Amendment? So first of all, we have a special appeal to these legislators. We have pathos for our future, and really it's a different audience. We are able to bring in a new sense of perspective and an inspiring and kind of unique person. So usually there's the same kind of people, the same adult activists who are amazing and so dedicated. But at the same time, when you're hearing from the same person over and over again about the same thing, it can be a little repetitive. And when you have students there, it really shows that not only are there more people working on this bill, which obviously there are, but it also shows that it is intergenerational, that it has strength, and it has strength across generations. Also, it is locally adaptable. The Green Amendment can be applied to local issues across the state, including, in your hometown, in your county, and to state level issues. So youth can really imagine how the Green Amendment will impact their communities. And that really helps get students involved when you can really have not the abstract in your mind, but a really concrete image in your mind of how the Green Amendment can be useful. There's so much more purpose for a student to become involved. Furthermore, we have a strong and supportive network of student activists across our state already, which students can become a part of. And this includes Green Amendment trainings, which we use to empower students, not only provide advocacy, but ensure that they feel empowered so that they can make a difference. And also, we have an online community already that is existing, which we can use to build relationships and make students feel connected. In a world where really we do all our work over Zoom, where we feel so unconnected and disconnected, where we do have that strong community online. It is also easier to explain and understand the Green Amendment than other environmental legislation. So you saw its length. It's around 3 paragraphs. And securing these basic environmental rights, really, when I first heard about it, I was surprised we didn't have one already. The right to clean air, pure water, is so essential and so logical that it is pretty astounding in my mind that these are not already enacted. So it definitely is less complicated to communicate, and also it's less intimidating to communicate with other people. So that includes legislators. So it definitely helps with students who might be worried about explaining a more difficult piece of legislation. With the Green Amendment, it really is pretty easy to understand, but also easy to explain. And then students, as all people do, but especially students, we have a strong personal threat to our future posed by climate change and other environmental issues. And not only does this influence legislators, but it also influences many youth themselves. I feel we have a strong need to fight for a Green Amendment and other environmental issues, as we are going to be living on this earth for longer, and same thing with every single, coming generation, which is why the Green Amendment is for generations. Each generation will almost need a Green Amendment even more than the past. And, we really do have that strong need and that strong desire to fight for a Green Amendment because of this. And also, as it says there is security in the Green Amendment that my future will be protected. And as a student, I have hopefully a long future ahead of me. I would like that to be protected. I would like that security. And that's what the Green Amendment protects. And that's what it provides. So how have youth managed to contribute to the Green Amendment movement? We know why, but how? There's many different student groups across the state that are working on this. The first we have listed here is where Swan and I, we are the campaign co-coordinators at NJSSC, the New Jersey Student Sustainability Coalition, around 100 or so or more students, hundreds of students, like around 400, and it really is a great network and community. And then Bioplastic Bags, this is next. They hosted a really successful webinar, and they work on other issues, mainly plastic pollution. And then also, which is really what I'm going to focus in on our next slide, is high school environmental clubs and how they can be involved. So high schools and Green Amendment and also middle schools have a strong connection. So classroom involvement fosters education in the classroom, obviously, but also potentially outside the classroom as activism. So climate change and environmental education in the classroom not only informs this generation of impending issues, but hopefully can inspire activism or personal interest. And this was really what happened for me. So I'm going to give a short story. When I was in 9th grade, our teacher gave us the opportunity to do a short research project. As I said, I like research, on a short, social justice topic or, recent issue of interest or something you'd like to learn more about. It can only be around 2 pages. I decided that I was going to solve climate change in this very short paper. Obviously, that's not happened, but I soon learned how much more complicated it was than I originally thought. I thought that as a student, I could figure this out if I did enough research. I soon learned I could not, and I soon had to realize I shifted my focus specifically onto just different types of fossil fuels. This really sparked my interest in environmental activism and helped me understand better that climate change is not so easy to solve, that it is super complex, and that stemmed from classroom involvement. We also understand that school environments have this potential, so we do utilize this to our campaign's advantage. And The school and environmental science clubs are a keystone part of our outreach, therefore, because we understand how much of an impact it can have. And the coalition itself actually does understand this connection. The coalition itself is a network of high school, college, and middle school environmental clubs. And that really was the founding principle. Now it has become a little bit more with campaigns like Swan and I's, where we do more stuff beyond that. But originally it was just meant to be a place to share resources and connect different students working. So that really is a keystone part of the entire organization. So in conclusion, school support and engagement is necessary and essential to grow the Green Amendment movement. And presentations are really been helpful in the past. What we have done is we've been able to virtually go into science classrooms, high school environmental clubs, and announcements with other student groups as well. And students have actually had the opportunity to do announcements to their local school. For example, we had a student who did an announcement to their school, and we were able to get many different student activists become involved in our campaign because of that. So school support is really necessary, and we really tried to emphasize that in getting students involved, starting at the high school level. So here's a more general timeline of our campaign. So you can understand a little bit politically, how it was working, just to give you that context, but also how your support will be so valuable to us. So here's the overall timeline. The first is, it was in the winter, it's getting started. That includes launching our campaign and training students across our state on the Green Amendment and their necessary skills. That includes our, empowerment, our trainings we talked about. The next is lobbying campaign, and that has to be done by the end of June based on the legislative schedule. And that includes lobbying legislators to potentially co-sponsor and to talk to local officials as well to pass local resolutions. And we need to pass the Green Amendment through the legislature with a 60% supermajority by the end of June to move on to that final step of our campaign, the ballot campaign, where the Green Amendment will have to receive a 50% majority of the vote on the ballot, which in general seems to be, based on other states, the easier time. And powerful student and teacher support, we believe, can help us achieve that goal of moving on to the ballot campaign, of passing the Green Amendment, of ensuring these basic environmental rights for all people, for all generations. We believe that with your help, with student and teacher support, that we can achieve this goal this year in 2022. And with your help, the Green Amendment could become a reality in our state. So in conclusion, you can help the Green Amendment in a few different ways. You can help us protect these basic rights for all people to clean air, pure water, stable climate, and a healthy environment by utilizing the Green Amendment in your classroom. That can include using the teacher guide, using lesson plans, by using it to fulfill those climate education requirements that are newly introduced this year. You can also help the Green Amendment by scheduling a presentation that can be by a student, or it can be by Maya Van Rossum or another Green Amendment affiliate. That is super helpful, and we've done lots of those. So at the end, we are going to, close to the end, by the way, we'll be giving our email, so please reach out to us if you're interested in scheduling a presentation. In the past, they've been very helpful. You can also, if you feel like you don't have time, we understand you're very busy as teachers. If you feel like you don't have time to either utilize the Green Amendment specifically in your class as a project or an example in your lesson plan, or if you feel like you don't have time to schedule a presentation, even if it's outside of class in a club, then please, it would be best if you could just at least share this opportunity with students. We have a sign-up link, and you'll see more on the next slide how you can share this opportunity with students, how they can get more involved.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Margaret. And here are the promised links. So our emails are right here, and we're always opening to answering any questions. I know, especially when it comes to the Green Amendment, just because of time issues, we kind of briefly covered that and focused really on the educational side. But if you're more curious about the Green Amendment as a bill, what it means, and all of that, legal stuff, we're always open for questions, and we have more detailed like presentations and trainings, or just can have a conversation about that. And our website, and I will type this into the chat really quickly, njstudentsustainability.com. If you go there, that is the website of our entire organization, and we are underneath teams and the Green Amendment. And if you have time, definitely look through the broader range of teams and projects that NJSSC is working on, because we have many different students who are passionate about different things, all working with our organization. So thank you so much for listening. We kind of cut into our question times there at the end, but now finally opening it up to any questions or comments.
Well, I have a question, and this is really more for Angie, is would you be willing to send out an email to all Angie members to tell them about the New Jersey Student Sustainability Coalition and the work they're doing with the Green Amendment, and to sign on as a endorser of the Green Amendment?
I'd be happy to work with the girls and have them write something for us that we could send out. I'd be happy to share it along with this video.
Thank
This
you.
is being recorded. You're welcome.
Yeah, I think they did a great job.
Thank
And
you.
it's so inspiring, and it's really inspiring for students.
Thank you. Especially when it comes to NJSSC, like we really believe that giving students the opportunity to get involved with this type of thing, because I know I, for one, I did not have many of the skills I now have before joining NJSSC, or know the extent to which students could get involved. And I think that's a really valuable part, at least for me, of my education.
Yeah, definitely. And just to see, we talked about the trainings we give as our campaign, which is a very small part of the coalition, but they offer a wide amount of trainings that span from how to run a meeting to lobbying legislators to how to organize an event. It's many things that are not only applicable to organizing, but I feel have prepared me very well for potential careers like in business or in nonprofit work.
Ladies, if you have some social media created for us that we can use to tweet out or so forth as well, that might be another nice way to get this out and teach us how to do something as well.
Definitely. I'll put in NJSSC's Instagram in the chat. And then Twitter, I will have to look up because I don't know that off the top of my head.
And if you go to the website, I believe that it's all linked on there with like little hyperlinks. So you can, if you tap on, they connect with us. I think there's certain little links you can, find the Facebook page and such, and our LinkedIn page as well.
Do we have any other questions for our presenters? Okay, then I want to say thank you so much to our presenters, both Margaret and Svan. We appreciate your time here today and express our gratitude for the wonderful work you are both doing. Just a few reminders before we close out this session. I am going to post an evaluation link, or Ben, if you could put that in there for me into the chat. Again, please subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can see all these presentations, as well as the ones that you weren't able to attend live. Also, thanks again to our conference sponsors, PSC&G, New Jersey Natural Gas, and our anonymous donor, and to BASF and the Grounds for Sculpture for supporting our field experiences this weekend. Tonight at 6:05 p.m., in just a few minutes, is Angie's networking night. So I'm hoping that you'll join us for some fun and connection. And again, thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to present, and for everybody who managed to come here tonight.
Definitely. We greatly appreciate it. As students, it's always nice to see adults being willing to hear what we have to say. So we do have a lot to say, and we're, we want to share it. Yeah, but thank you, Angie. Thank you for having this event and choosing us to present.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you very much. It was wonderful.
Thank you, everyone.
And good luck on the Green Amendment.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Okay.